You found product market fit, but now the systems are cracking. The team needs you for everything. Growth feels like quicksand. The more you move, the deeper it pulls you in. This is the scaling paradox, where founders and operators come to get unstuck. I'm Blake Moseni, and I sit down with founders and operators that nearly burnt out and rebuilt their business to operate without them. If you're stuck in the middle, this is where we fix it.
Sometimes what things appear to be on the outside is not the internal experience that someone is having. I think particularly when someone's in a leadership role and they're feeling like they have to put on a certain persona or a certain face, right, to the business or to themselves, their ego. And inside there might be this incredible amount of stress, distress going on. If you're a leader and you're not uncomfortable, you're probably not pushing the edge, because being a really good leader in every phase of the company takes a ton of introspection, becoming more and more who you are, clarity, vision, values. Like, it's a 3D chess game to be doing that, and it might not feel like winning when you're in it.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of The Scaling Paradox. In this episode, I have Michele Jewett, who is a leadership coach and certified ICF professional and is the founder of Q4 Leaders. She has a business degree and a background in psychology and has done hundreds of hours of coaching CEOs and founders and spent over a decade chairing the CEO of Peer Advisory Council and helping leaders trade burnout for clarity and wisdom. She is a proud mom of two world-changing daughters and believes an emotional intelligence should be a part of a line item on every single P&L. Michele, I'm so excited to have you on.
Thank you, Blake. I'm excited for our conversation as well.
As am I. I think before we get into the topic for today, it'll be beneficial for some of the listeners to better understand kind of what does executive coaching mean, and how are you brokering that in the work that you're doing?
What a great question. I don't think I've been asked that before. So I think executive coaching has become a really broadly used term in the last maybe 5 or 10 years.
Sure.
It can be very performance based in terms of what are we optimizing for, and KPIs and numbers we're trying to hit. I think it can also be more psychology based, right? In terms of what beliefs are we bringing to the table, what's our background, how is that showing up in our leadership, and everything in between. I think both are effective. I tend to put a little more emphasis on the psychology side of things because I'm fascinated by that world, and honestly, I think it's maybe the biggest lever and one that doesn't get as much attention paid to it, and it's fascinating and fun to be involved in that combined with business.
Absolutely. I love the call out, especially around the psychological element of things, because the financials and everything are important, and that is necessary for capitalism to succeed. But I think the other element that people often don't think about, to your point, is this need to understand what actually drives humans and the humans, I mean, at least for the time being, till AI takes over, right? are the things that are propelling so many organizations forward. So being able to unpack that is so important. Maybe you could tell me a little bit about the community that you run within Q4 and what that looks like and some of the sizes of the businesses that you're coaching.
Sure. So Q4 was founded in 2020, March of 2020, actually, which is a very interesting time.
Was that intentional, or was that just like a happenstance?
It happened that way. Yeah,
Fair
the
enough.
world was falling off a cliff at the same time. I bought a big house, launched a new business. Things were.
Oh man.
The amount of change that was happening in my world was a foundational shift. It's one of those things you look back on it and say, well, yeah, that all makes sense now. But at the time, I will admit that it felt a little scary. I had been a chairperson for an organization called Vistage for 7 years. They're the number one CEO membership in the world, and great foundation for me, and decided it was time to go out on my own. And so where we are now is it's myself and two other coaches that work closely together. We each bring a different strength to the table, but we focus on people that are in that 5 million up to maybe 50 million in revenue people that are mostly founders, entrepreneurs, they've been in the trenches. They know what it feels like to have to make payroll. They've been through the
Mm,
stresses of trying to balance, family, as in addition to everything that's going on at work. And people that come into our ecosphere stay an average of 6 or 7 years, which is a
mm,
long time in this industry. And that brings all of us a lot of joy. Every client that we take on, we look at it in terms of the joy meter, how much joy
sure.
it brings to us and our team and the alignment in the work. And then, of course, what kind of opportunity it is from a business perspective. So we measure it on both sides that if it doesn't match our joy meter and our values, we kind of pass on those
Mm.
businesses because they may not be the right fit for where we're going to make a big change in their life. So if it's not going to be something that's going to change your world for the better, then we don't want to work with you. It's not fun.
It's
So,
I love that push, especially because I don't think a lot of people take that vantage point or perspective when they're bringing on clients into their business. It's really just like wherever there is business, let's bring it in and let's continue to try to grow.
and I
And
understand that. Yeah, I understand that perspective. Yeah.
which I mean, to your point, it's understandable, but I think it's great to hear that you guys have the joy meter is something that I'm interested in unpacking more as we continue to have today's conversation
Sure.
because I know a lot of founders and leaders, business leaders, are struggling in different places
Mm-hmm.
because they have a multitude of different things pulling them in different directions. And I think what I'm most excited about for today's conversation is your experience working with so many different business leaders. You've gotten a lens directly into what are the things that they're struggling with day to day. And I'm excited because the listeners often don't have a true channel to have those type of conversations. And so I think often people look at the founders or the people that are scaling businesses and they're like, you're winning in so many different places. You're winning financially, maybe you're winning in your life. You're ticking off all the boxes that within our capitalist society would say is like you've achieved the monogram of
Yeah.
success.
Right.
But internally they don't feel like they're winning. They feel like they're losing for whatever reason. And I think your experience in understanding what is driving that will be such an unlock for so many of those listeners that are in that exact position. And so it would be good to understand kind of what's the first sign that someone is winning but doesn't necessarily feel like that is actually true, but they're actually losing in on the inside.
Yeah, that's such a great way to put that question. I think it's a very interesting way to phrase that, right? Because sometimes what things appear to be on the outside is not the internal experience that someone is having. I think
Mm-hmm.
particularly when someone's in a leadership role and they're feeling like they have to put on a certain persona or a certain face, right, to the business or to themselves, their ego. And
Mm-hmm.
inside there might be this incredible amount of stress, distress going on. So I think in exploring that with many business owners over the years, there's a couple of things that come up. One is that getting comfortable with that feeling of being uncomfortable and knowing that that's exactly where you should be so that the narrative you have about it is positive,
Mm-hmm.
right? This doesn't feel good right now because I'm
Mm-hmm.
in a startup and there's this huge amount of stress and right. And the story you tell yourself about that is actually the most important part of it. So if the story you tell yourself is this is what this is supposed to feel like and we're on track and it's really freaking uncomfortable, you know,
Mm-hmm.
then you're going to be okay. But if the story you're telling yourself is I suck, I suck, I suck, I suck,
Mm-hmm.
then it's not likely to keep moving you forward down that track, if that makes sense. And if you're in a leadership position in any organization, really, growing, not growing, um, one that's maybe in some great deal of change, if you're a leader and you're not uncomfortable, you're probably not pushing the edge because being a really good leader in every phase of the company takes a ton of introspection, becoming more and more who you are, clarity, vision, values. Like it's a 3D chess game to be
Absolutely.
doing that. Um, and it might not feel like winning when you're in it,
You know,
but it
it's
is.
funny.
Yeah.
It's funny you bring that up because, and I often I've been fascinated by like the history of human beings and some of the biology associated to that. A lot of those feelings that you're alluding to tie back to this idea of the fear response, and often the fear response is the thing that kept us alive, right? You have
Yeah.
fear that
Yeah.
helps you run
Absolutely.
like crazy away from a saber-toothed tiger 10,000 years ago, right?
Yep.
And I think the biology has remained the same within human beings, but the threats have changed. And so I think it's so like I love your call out of the reframe of understanding that stress is not necessarily the like a signal that you're about to be eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. It's like stress is actually a signal of growth. And if you can reframe that and turn
Yeah.
that into a positive feeling, like that enables you to overcome. And so it would be interesting to understand how you help people work through that reframe. For maybe it's
Yeah.
before we get to work, it's like how do you identify that you even need a reframe, and then how do you work through it?
It is a fascinating question. So our software does not match our environment anymore, right? So our
Mm,
software is designed for an environment that actually had real threats like tigers,
mm-hmm,
and bears and warriors and whatever that world was that we don't
mm-hmm,
have anymore. But our
sure.
software hasn't been upgraded sufficiently. So now we're in that fight, flight response all the time, which drives
Mm-hmm,
bad health outcomes, right? It drives difficult relationships. Like there's a lot of negativity sort of related
sure.
to that. But there was a study that I think ties into this, and that was that if you look at soldiers that have fought for Israel in battle and then come home, there's not a high degree of PTSD like
Mm,
the soldiers coming home from Vietnam had. So the people coming home from Vietnam had huge amounts of drug problems and PTSD. They were not
sure.
welcomed home as heroes. They were not framing the work they did as important and as meaningful, as opposed to soldiers, from Israel who were in horrible battles and really difficult situations, but were framed as doing something that was great and meaningful and integrity and heroes. And the way
Mm-hmm,
that they framed their experience caused them not to have PTSD. So the
mm,
same is true in business owners. You're in battle, and if you
mm.
frame that as something, it's tough and it's hard, but we're winning. This is important work. We're on a team. This is meaningful in my life. Then the way your body processes it, you actually don't get the cortisol response that you do with the exact same experience, but a different story.
It's so interesting because I think of um, I think of some of the biggest business leaders in the world, and often most of them are mission driven. And and I'm not like we don't even need to run through names, but
Yeah,
it's almost like to achieve those higher levels of success and to actually transcend the day-to-day struggles, you have to have a mission that's bigger than yourself that you're aspiring towards, because the storm's going to come either way, whether you have a big mission or a small mission.
right.
Or maybe I should say whether you have a mission or no mission. That's a better way to say it.
Mm,
And the mission or the destination helps actually push you through that storm and not get caught, lost at sea. If I can,
absolutely.
if that analogy lands with what you were saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's something called the first arrow and the second arrow, which you may have
Hmm.
heard, but like the first arrow is the tough thing that happens. Like we lost our funding, or the product didn't sell like we thought it would, or our top three people left without notice last week. Like whatever
Mm-hmm.
the thing is that happens is the first arrow. And there's nothing you can do about those things happening necessarily. Like it's part of being in business. But the second arrow is when you beat yourself up or your team up or tell yourself a story that is now not going to serve you to move forward, right? So, first arrow, not optional. Second arrow is optional. And you have to watch for those coming in and say, wait, this is no, thank you. I'm going to. I'm going to not take that in because it's not going to help us to move forward.
I love that structure, and it really speaks to this idea of agency that I often speak to with different people that I interact with. It's like we all have agency there's things that are always going to happen in life. It's just our
Yep.
decision of how we're going to react to it. And so as we think about those business leaders that have all the metrics and the KPIs that are succeeding, but they're not feeling like that, or they're winning internally. How are we trying to reposition them to realize that maybe those monetary figures are not the only success metrics, and weren't actually the goal that we were aspiring towards, and there's something bigger that we're working towards?
It's an interesting challenge, and I will say that some people are not open to redefining what success looks like for them, which I think is what you're
Mm,
talking about, right? Like success checking
absolutely.
all the boxes out here, something
Mm-hmm.
still feels wrong internally, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is the experience that my dad had being a business person. He made $1 million after having had a very good career in the Air Force.
Mm-hmm.
And he couldn't figure out why at that point he still wasn't happy,
Mm-hmm.
which to him it was a huge amount of money at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know it until later because I was young at the time, but I realized later that he had lost all access to his emotions, having grown up on a farm in the 50s, being a
Mm,
military person, trained out of being able to have any emotions,
mm,
using alcohol, these different things, so that when it came time to celebrate or have joy, that wasn't available to him. And I think it's
sure.
true with people that I see that are young people that have been grinding and
Mm,
grinding and grinding and working beyond their capacity, then you have flatlined your emotions. And then you
mm,
wonder, how come I hit the thing now and I don't feel the joy? Like
mm.
where's the happiness that was supposed to be at the end of all this? And you've already programmed yourself not to be responsive to your own emotions. You've checked out of them.
It's funny because I've subscribed to the hustle culture mentality, and I love the call out on your for your dad specifically, of like
Yeah.
he built up calluses throughout his life that maybe were almost irremovable based off the way that you described it,
Yep.
and so I struggle with it. I struggle with it myself because I do believe in being able to grind and to get some of the stuff done that needs to happen to push things to the next level.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I do question at times, like, if you're always running at 120 miles per hour, the car is going to break down at some point,
Mm.
or the car's not going to operate at some point. And so, how do you get the full utility out of your vehicle and be able to ramp it up to 120 when you need to, but also have
We have it
have,
both.
ha throw it in neutral sometimes when you're going down a hill, you know? So how do you work through that? How do you work through that with people? And also, it would be interesting to understand like what your point of view is, and maybe we can, instead of answering that question directly, let's lean in with the model that you shared with me in the past, which
Mm.
is the model you use for people to ensure that they're leaning in and getting that internal alignment. Can you talk
Sure.
us through what that model looks like?
Yeah, yeah. I don't even know if I would necessarily call it a model, but the idea is that um, one of the greatest drivers a human has is this idea to match our internal landscape, story, belief system with what's happening externally in the
Sure.
world, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, my dad was a brilliant man, a pilot, could play music, like all of these things, very funny, all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But he also had a deep distrust of other human beings, and
Mm,
a deep feeling like people and things were out to get him, and he had to be on the defense. So, he would come home to share the story of his day and all these things that had happened, and this asshole did this and this jerk did that, and he's lucky
mm,
he found out this guy was about to take him for this money, like blah blah blah. And then
mm,
my grandmother on my mom's side saw the world as everything is an opportunity. She literally
mm,
would say tra la la all the time, like tra la la, and would come home and tell the stories of her day because she lived with us for a while. And like
mm,
everything that happened to her was, oh my gosh, this lady at the grocery store offered to help me do 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 do, and then this person whatever, and like, and as a kid, like observing this situation of this people having experiences in the world and the story that they tell themselves about it, or the experience that they're having to match the inside. So as a business
mm,
owner, if you're repeatedly hitting up against some of the same obstacles, um, it is very interesting to be able to create a relationship with that business owner where that person can be very transparent with their thought process behind things, right? So I was meeting with somebody last week who owns a business. It's small. They've got 20 employees. And this person keeps telling me his culture is not right. And the people are really not they don't want to work. They're lazy because they're this generation. This generation doesn't get it. They're just a bunch of lazy people, right? And because I honestly, I care about my clients so much. I don't want to work with anybody I can't care about. So I don't work with
Sure.
assholes. But people that I care about, we have trust. They can show up as themselves. I can hold up a mirror and say, so help me understand how all these people are assholes. Tell me more about that, right? We have this unfolding, and it turns out if I hold up a mirror, the person, if they want to change, they're going to say, oh wait, maybe who's the asshole, or maybe who's the person that's not trusting, maybe who's the person that needs to make an adjustment. And it's a very interesting paradigm. It's very powerful. There's an author named Mark Manson who wrote the the something of not giving an F.
It's like the power of not giving a fuck, or it's like the power of
Yeah, it's the something of not
something along
giving.
those lines. I've heard of that title before. I haven't read it.
It is actually a great book. Anyway, it's a best-selling book, The Something of Not Giving an F. And he talks about on his podcast, there's two ways that a human will usually be able to change their belief system. One is through therapy, which is usually long and expensive and it can work. And the other thing is through peer groups. Because you're in a room with people who care about you, who understand you, people who are there to challenge you, and you, over time, it holds up a mirror to who you are and how you're showing up. And that gives you the option then to have the awareness to make a change, right? You still have to do the work. You still have to have the awareness. But in our everyday lives, we don't have that. If we're just running around, and even with friend groups where there's not enough trust, respect, shared values, the mission of a friend group is not to challenge you usually. The mission of a friend group is not to say, this is an issue you've brought to the group 4 times now. What's really happening here? What's really going on? Those kind of things. So it was really interesting to hear Mark Manson just confirm what I intuitively felt about what was happening in the room and how that opens people up.
Well, I what I really like about what you shared there is this idea of, especially around building your tribe. It's like, who is your tribe of people or within your peer group that are going to help you unlock the next chapter of growth that you're trying to achieve. And I think people have to be relatively calculated with how they go about getting to that destination. And push on me if you feel like I'm bringing some of my own baggage into this, but I do feel as though a lot of interactions in today's society is very status driven, and so the people that you're interacting with, there's always some level of competition that's going on, and so
Yeah.
I think being able to have that safe space is necessary. For those listeners that don't have the community and are struggling to build and find that peer group, what's your recommendation on how they can go about curating something like that? Now, obviously, everyone that's listening probably wants to come and join Q4.
Well,
But if
obviously,
you're not
yeah.
if you're not based in the California area, I know it's I know you usually do stuff in person. Um, so how would you recommend someone that's based in New York or
Right.
Florida or whatever part of the world that's
For
where they're
sure.
listening in from,
Yeah, yeah.
building that community and setting it up in a way that they can create that mirror for themselves?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Um, I just want to go back quickly to what you said about tribe before I answer that question, though, because the
Sure.
question of tribe is so interesting. I met with my CEO group on Tuesday, 12 business
Mm,
owners around a board, a boardroom uh, for 6 hours. And I said to them, the rate of change in this world is phenomenal right now. We've never seen anything like that. It's the time to be a part
mm,
of a tribe, but not a tribe that breaks people apart, a tribe that brings people together. I think the drive in our country to be tribal has led to this far right and this far left that we have going on.
mm,
which is not productive for the mission of the country, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So a tribe that comes together in the boardroom, there's no politics, there's no religion, there's running a better business and having a better life. That's it.
Mm.
Those are our shared values. That's what we point towards. And I'm really biased towards having a professional facilitator in the room because
Sure.
if I honestly think if you try to do this with 10 high-powered people, egos, businesses,
Oh,
that kind of thing, and you don't have
absolutely.
someone refereeing the situation, yeah, it can be tough. But I mean, there are other organizations. We're talking about doing a virtual group right now just because I prefer in person, and if you can find that, that's the best option. But
Mm-hmm.
we're thinking about doing a virtual group just because there are people from around the US that are interested. But,
Yeah.
Vistage is a great organization, EO, YPO, like there's a lot of organizations. And I think when you go looking for them, I would say interview at least two or three different facilitators and chairs and interview two or three people that are in the group because each group has its own culture, right? Its own
Mm.
approach, its own way of looking at things.
I really like that. Would you say that most business groups have a similar perspective as what you alluded to with the focus on business and the focus on joy of life, or it varies from facilitator to facilitator, group to group?
It varies greatly. Yeah.
Okay.
And
How,
sometimes
how
it
did?
can be hard, like for you, Blake, you might want to sign up for the coach or facilitator who wants to drive the grind culture because that's where you're
Hmm.
comfortable. But
Hmm.
maybe if you signed up with a group where you're uncomfortable, maybe that's where your greater value would be. I don't know. It's interesting.
I think that's such a good push, and it kind of goes back to something that you called out at the beginning of this podcast, which is growth is found in growth is found in doing what makes you uncomfortable. I read a quote this morning that just like hit me down to my core. It said, the treasure you are seeking is in the cave that you're afraid to go into.
Wow.
And I was just like, damn. Like I just like, are you
Yeah.
kidding me? Like I that it just it cut to the soul just with some other things that are going on in my life right now. And I think
Wow.
you just called it out. You called it out earlier in the podcast, but I think you called it out perfectly in relation to building out a peer group like this. It's like if you're not uncomfortable, a little bit uncomfortable in the group that you're in, you're probably not pushing yourself to grow to that next level.
And there are what I call country club CEO groups. And so
Mm,
I've visited those groups. I've been invited to chair those kind of groups. People are comparing the size of their airplane. Um,
mm-hmm,
I don't have an interest in that. And it could serve a purpose. It just serves a different purpose that I'm not interested in. I want Blake to live his best life. The number one people, the number one thing people, say on their deathbed is I should have put more effort into relationship, into connection, into spending time
mm,
with my kids. And I always had that in the back of my mind, even though I want
mm,
Blake's business to do well. I
mm-hmm,
want you to be profitable. I want you to have financial freedom. Yes, yes, yes. We're going to play on that game board, full on, three dimensional. You
mm-hmm,
want an airplane? I don't care. Whatever. We'll do that.
mm-hmm,
Also, who are you? If your business disappears tomorrow, what do you stand for?
mm,
I once had a group of CEOs in a room, and we had a very frank conversation about what they went through during the 2008 financial crisis and meltdown. Four of them
sure.
admitted to having been suicidal at that time
Mm,
because their business was their identity. It
mm-hmm,
was them through and through.
mm,
There was nothing there that disappeared. And I don't
mm.
ever want that to happen to anybody.
It's funny because yeah, there's not very many people out there that their headstone is gonna say their business at the top of the. There's a couple,
There's
right?
a
Like
couple, yeah.
Bezos might have Amazon at the top of his headstone and Blue Origin and some of the other stuff, right? But
Right.
like
Yeah, it could happen.
it could happen. But I think there's another quote that I really like from Denzel Washington. It says, uh, when you pass all this, like you've never seen a hearse followed by a U-Haul is basically what it said. And it's calling out, and it calls out like the pharaohs and Egyptians all tried to do that. They tried to
Yep.
take all the things with them to this next
Yep.
life or whatever you believe in. But the reality is it's all legacy based. And so making sure that your mission, back to what you called out before, is aligned with your core values and who you want to be
Hmm.
is going to help you transcend whatever objectives that you're aspiring towards and being the best human that you want. And so
Yep.
we spent some time talking about different people, situations. You kind of you said you acted like a mirror for a particular founder. If so, like if a listener that is on the track right now is in a hole and they're looking for some feedback, some advice, what's one shift that you think that they can make this week to help
Mm.
them take the next step forward in their life and in their
Sure.
journey?
Sure. I feel like these things are always simple but not easy, right? And the things that are simple but not easy are usually the most powerful. So, what I would say for, I mean, I work 90% with men, not by
Mm-hmm.
choice, but it just happens to be sort of the demographic, psychographic of the target audience. And so I work primarily with men and with high achievers. And I think they're very slow to ask for help
Mm-hmm.
from others, from their team, from wherever they might need that, and to put the ego aside a little bit, but keep the vision and the values, right? So the ego, in terms of like, I have to know everything, I have to be the smartest one in the room, I have to, right, be the one driving all the outcomes, that can take a back seat. But you can hold on to the vision and the values, right? Because as if a leader steps away from those, then I think you lose credibility. But if
Mm-hmm.
you bring vulnerability, ask your team for help while speaking to the vision and the values, then actually you build teamwork, you build trust, you build all of that. And I think it can be something that can be very difficult to sort of get comfortable with. But once you do, the team tends to actually come together
Mm-hmm.
behind that person.
I love that. And so, like, very tactically, how do you think someone can go about architecting their vision and their values, and how do you work leaders through that?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm gonna add this just little piece of it, and then I'll be interested in your perspective there. I think a lot of people's values and vision are somewhat dogmatic, meaning society tells me I need a jet. Society tells me I need this car, or
Yeah.
all of these things that are quote unquote the key to happiness. Um, so how do you guide people through that process, but also not get trapped in the dogma trap of like, I think this is what my vision and values are because some force outside of myself has influenced me to believe that that is the case.
I love that. I mean, that's really interesting, right? We all are kind of handed a set of what success looks like and tend to just sort of step into that without really
Mm-hmm.
questioning it. Um, this might sound a little strange, but one of the best ways to do this right now is with Chat GPT. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it, as you know, with the correct prompt, meaning here's what I'm about, here's what's important to me, here's when I feel the most empowered in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Let me give you a little bit of background and understanding. And I'm working on what my personal value statement is going to be. And then I want to see
Mm-hmm.
how that might cross over to my business value statement. Please ask me a series of 10 questions that will lead me through a process and exercise to better understand
Oof.
a very authentic set of values for myself. And
Mm-hmm.
then the next step will be to say, when I wish to apply these to my business, some may fit, some may not, right?
Mm-hmm.
Depending on what the business is and who the stakeholders are. Let's walk through that process with another step of 10 questions, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's a very powerful tool that I feel like is in the last couple of months come into its own in terms of the level of like emotional intelligence, coaching,
Mm-hmm.
therapy. Like it's mind blowing the
Well,
conversations that you can have. So I think that could be a cool way to do it.
I love the push there, especially like the juncture that we're at in technology, and to your point with how strong chat has gotten. Um,
Yeah.
there was something I read that said if you could ask for advice from someone that has read 100,000 books and almost had perfect recall, like, would you do that? And obviously the answer is yes to anybody that you talk to, right? And so it's
You
it's
have
a
that
perfect
at your
call out.
fingertips. Yes.
Yeah.
I've been having mind
Yeah.
blowing conversations lately. I'm just so fascinated, especially talking to AI about the level of consciousness that AI may or may not have. Is it actually
Mm-hmm.
thinking? How do you define thinking? Those kinds of more philosophical questions. What's
Mm-hmm.
happening in the United States right now?
Mm-hmm.
Just the level of seemingly it's been overlaid with a level of wisdom, and I suppose it's just been trained to make me feel that way. But whatever it is,
Sure.
it's a very powerful tool.
100%. I couldn't agree with you more. And I'm so tempted to go down the rabbit hole on that, but I'm gonna keep us here.
All right,
And I'll just
I hear
what I
you.
will
We
say
can go
about
all the way down that rabbit
oh,
hole.
I could go all the way down, and we'd meet the rabbit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
What I would add to the prompt that you called out is, um, I think a lot of people don't realize that if you ask for different vantage points from the tool, like the persona
Yes.
for chat or other generative AI tools to take,
Yep.
it optimizes the tone and the narrative based off of
Oh,
that. And so,
love that.
adding to what Michelle said around asking what 10 questions can I ask myself to help me understand what my core vision and values are. Please take the stance of an executive coach or something to that effect will help prompt out a little bit like more targeted
I
questions
love that. Yeah,
to get to the outcome that we're looking for. So I just wanted to add that little piece on for the
for
listeners to
sure. And also, I'd
sharpen up
like to hear it from
that
the
prompt.
perspective of the Buddha and also the psychologist, and
Love it.
bring
Okay,
it
there you
all
go.
in there.
Yeah, bring it all in there. Bring it all like the supreme executive coach,
Yeah,
right?
the
Yeah,
supreme.
there you go. There you go.
Cool.
Well, I appreciate you taking us through that overall perspective and how you've seen leaders work through this situation in all of the coaching and activities that you've done. Before we get ready to wrap things up, I would be interested in hearing what's what's some advice that you would give to your earlier self. Like, what's one piece of advice that you would give to your earlier self based off everything that you know today, the work that you've done, the amazing girls that you've raised, the life that you live? What would that piece of advice be?
Uh, so I would say the biggest advice would be lighten up, girlfriend. I can be
Mm,
pretty serious. I was raised by a military dad. I was, the oldest adult child of an alcoholic in a family that
mm,
had a lot of dynamics going on, and I can just be like super. This is what we need to achieve, and here's my list, and here's what we're doing, and in that, so I'm really, really learning to lighten up. And if younger Michelle could have lightened up, I think it would have been a good thing.
absolutely. I love that. I love that. It's funny because there's a speaker that I really like. His name's Naval Ravikant, and part of the reason why I ask this question,
Yeah.
I ask it to every speaker that I bring on. And I've actually never shared this, so listeners, you're getting a taste as to why I asked this
Woohoo!
question.
Yay!
He said something that I really appreciated going through this exercise myself, which was, if you had advice for yourself, what's the advice that you would go give your younger self? And it basically is a projection of, it's probably some of the advice that you need to hear today. And
Sure.
I share that with the listeners because we often don't change as much as we think we do from stage to stage. Like there are cataclysmic leaps that take place, but to our core, there are elements that remain the same.
Yeah.
And so it is great to hear. It's something that I think all of us can take on in terms of don't take life so seriously. Let's live in the moment, and that's all part of that legacy building and making sure that we're aligning with the mission
I
that we're
love
building
that.
over time.
Yeah. And you're right. It is something that I could still work on for sure.
One other question for you. What are you hopeful for? I know you talked a little bit about AI, but what are you most hopeful for in the coming years?
I love that question, and I'm actually going to use that question. I think at the end of my meetings, sometimes I'll
Mm-hmm.
finish with something like that because I think it just puts me in a really good place, in a really good
Mm-hmm.
headspace to think about that. And I am super hopeful for this next generation. You have a beautiful little girl, I have a beautiful little grandbaby, and they are,
Mm-hmm.
woof, so wise.
100%. They they're leaps and bounds ahead of I think where we were, and I think to your point, there's so many good things on the horizon. So I really
Yeah,
really appreciate you sharing that.
sure.
Awesome. Well, Michelle, this has been spectacular getting your point of view on how we can continue to work through the early struggles, even if we're all the metrics are saying that we're victorious, and how we can continue to align our overall core values and mission to really propel our teams and ourselves forward as business leaders. So thank you so much for the time and for
It's been
joining the
super
Scaling
fun.
Paradox.
And the name of that book is The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F.
Okay. Okay. I like
I
it.
knew it would pop up in my mind. It's actually a good read, and I actually recommend it, especially if you're having a hard time with being spread too thin. You really got to focus in. So this was really fun, Blake. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Looking forward to having you on again in the future.
Awesome.
That's it for this episode of the Scaling Paradox. If this helped cut through the chaos, please send it to another founder or operator that's stuck in it too. If you haven't subscribed yet, let's fix that. New episodes of the Scaling Paradox drop every other Thursday. There's no filler in this podcast, just the real work of scaling past yourself.